Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Super Tease video. And Blizzard has given an official update to the add-on situation that is going to be actioned on basically almost immediately here to the game. And I know a lot of players have been wondering, it's all up in the air. What are the changes to the add-ons? What's the changes to the baseline features and UI in the near term, right? Because it just seems so far in the future as to what it is they're exactly going to be doing. This seems to be a big first step, what they're going to be directly incorporating into the game with this improvement to the cooldown manager, as well as some additional updates. So as always, if you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. The first thing that they do is they admit the initial cooldown manager was maybe not that great. They've listened to a lot of feedback and they've decided to make it fully customizable, which is very important, right? Because from their side, they'd have to understand all the nuances of every single spec individually, and as they change over time and how the community is adapted and playing with the specs as opposed to the way they expected them to play with the specs, they'd never be able to continually keep that as accurate as possible by determining which spells are going to be tracked on the cooldown manager. So instead, they're going to be initiating advanced cooldown settings, which is basically turning this into an in-game add-on, right? It's an in-game UI improvement, and we've been talking about, like, what are they going to add baseline to the game? How are they going to improve it? This isn't the only thing. It's just the first thing. This is one of the steps to get there. So they want it to be easier for you to track your cooldowns. They're going to be adding in new features to be able to pick and edit and choose and trim out what spells you want, which is great because now you can build it exactly the way that you want. So maybe there's cooldowns that are strong in PvE that you want to track, but in PvP they're not as important. You're going to be able to move in, select those, and see them more readily, right? This is a very important component to playing the game, knowing what cooldowns you have, how impactful they are, and when they are available. They're going to now let you choose to track what you want to track. So I think that's a great improvement. Definitely glad that they iterated on feedback with this, because initially it was kind of just like a lot of players, there's a lot of cooldowns on the tracker. I was like, I just turned it off because I didn't care about Stampeding Roar as much as I did, some other abilities in a PvP situation to have on that. But it's basically like an additional action bar. You can see it. You'll be able to drag and drop and move things around the same way that you would with your regular action bar. So you can build basically customized action bars for cooldowns. You'll be able to build customized action bars with others, but it's a lot more streamlined, drag and drop, a lot less technical than having to go to a third-party website, set up a weak aura to get the same type of effect. So I definitely think this is an improvement from the first iteration of it. Could it go beyond this? It likely could. And you're going to be able to get drop-down menus. You can pull things from talents. You can drag them from every aspect of the UI. And you can see when it's active or when it's inactive with this tracker as well. So as many settings as possible, basically, to enhance the cooldown tracker. And you can search for abilities. So if there's too many icons, it's Death Strike, you can't find the icon, you can just search for the ability. So even more customization there. And this isn't even the biggest part. I think the biggest part is a little bit more into this update. But I'm glad that it's like, they didn't just implement cooldown manager, leave it in that state where like people weren't really using it. They've iterated on it in a way that now we can, tailor it to our own individual needs, as opposed to relying on it 100% from them, which I think is better for their, overall management of their resources, and it's better for our experience. So you're able to get that. So you can get income cooldown tracking. So you can also see cooldowns at the top that are coming off cooldown, right? And I think a lot of players download weak auras for this. So when your cooldown becomes available, it pops up and it's like, oh, okay, I know I got incarnate because this thing popped up. And that's a very common add-on for players to download to be able to track that. That's just baseline in the game. So you'll be able to see when the cooldowns are rotating with this additional setting to it. So you can see they're adding quite a lot. There's a lot more than I honestly was anticipating them to add initially with the cooldown manager. I thought it would just kind of be an extra action bar. You can customize it to show more CDs, less CDs, whatever you want. It's fully customizable. They're introducing debuff tracking. Now, I also think they need to look at buff tracking. Something like a Resto Druid, for example. You have a lot of heal over time effects, and they spam the player frame or the raid frame, and it collapses out the buffs, and it's like you don't know exactly even how many hots you have on the target. So this is great for debuffs. I'd love to see one for buffs, to be making tracking buffs better, because to me something like debuffs, I forgot the name of the add-on, big debuffs, should be like baseline in the game, because it makes important things like life bloom larger than others have to seize. So you can track those most vital ones. They're not compartmentalized and invisible basically to the rest of the game. And just big debuffs is a really universal, just strong add-on. I'd really like to see that baked into the game. But they're adding debuff tracking. So you'll be able to track what dots, or maybe in this case is Unholy DK, what wounds are on the target, with this as part of the existing cooldown manager frame. I don't know how much use this will get. I feel like a lot of players, they track these debuffs above health bars. So like monster health bars, they have an add-on that shows these debuffs there. I think big debuffs is literally that add-on. So having a separate bar that tracks that basically just means you can move, like it's like the buff tracker at the top, but now it's with debuffs and you can move it around. I feel like most players don't play the game that way. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments down below, but I don't know if I would want an extra action bar that tracks the debuffs. I like it right above the enemy player, or enemy target's health bar. So this one I'm probably less likely to use, but I kind of have to wait and see how it's actually implemented in the game. Maybe it'll end up being better than not. And then this one's a big one. Look, they said it right here. It's big defensive tracking. Now it's been debated, how much cooldown tracking is going to be available in the game. A lot of players think it should be none. It opens up more nuance to the game, more likelihood to make mistakes, and it creates more dynamic gameplay, which can be true in PvP, but it can also create frustrating gameplay because if you're a healer and you have no idea what defensive people have been using because you're not in comms on solo shuffle, or you're in a Mythic Plus pug group, you're not in voice, and you die to a mechanic because you didn't know that the guy already used the defensive, that's going to create a lot of frustration. So this is a very difficult line to walk for them, I think, because if they create too much frustration, I think people will quit over that. And I think we want to make the game better for healers, not the experience worse. So I'm kind of almost a fan of Omni CD, maybe not Omni Bar, maybe not tracking enemy offensive cooldowns as kind of clearly with boxes, but showing ally cooldowns when they're active or where they're located to know like, oh, he's got something to save him, and then making it universal. It looks like right now it's like a green icon for this, which is important. Because right now, obviously, like there's so many icons you need to know in the game. If it's just green, and green means he's durable, you don't need to care what this icon is. You just know he's got something up that's durable, and he's likely going to survive a mechanic because he has a green thing there. I think universally, changing this to a color system is really good. So if this stays like this, where it's green, and you can see that the warrior got a life cocoon, so he doesn't need, now I'm the warrior, and I know I don't need to use dab of the sword. The healer's got me. I got a cooldown active. With this HUD. So I don't know if this is exactly like Omni CD, where you can see like what they have available as opposed to what they've activated, because right now it looks like it's really hard to tell either way. It says track these external enhancements when they're active on your character, so you can only see once it's been used. You can't see if it's available. So maybe you won't overlap because you'll see that it's been used. That should help in shuffle, right? A lot of people, they get the Guardian Spirit and then the Ice Block on top of it, and you end up overlapping cooldowns because of that. So it helps with the active usage of it, but it doesn't help with the preemptive usage to know like, oh, your healer does have something. So could have some situations like in solo shuffle where paladins die without bubbling, but the healer didn't even know if they had bubble because it's not tracked. But they are implementing a lot more than I was initially anticipating this early on, right? These are core baseline edit mode mechanic updates to the UI. They're coming out very soon. I was expecting a lot more of this later as they were moving, but they have said that this add-on process is going to be slow. It's going to be over time. It's going to be iterated based on feedback. So if any of these features come through and they just feel like a flop, no one's really using them, or it's problematic, then they are likely going to iterate on them further into the future. But I think it's really important. Another component is that they're adding sound alerts. Now, a lot of people, they play with like Gladiator Losa, right? And I actually use audio a lot to track abilities in the game. Offensive cooldowns. I've memorized basically the sound effects of every spell, and that's how I play the game for a large majority of it. So they're adding additional alerts that will notify you when an ability or a buff becomes active or is active, which you can configure in the settings with audio notifications, and you can configure specific abilities with a unique alert. So this is still kind of like foghorn gameplay I'm a bit concerned about. But at the same time, maybe they do need to universalize certain mechanics, right? Like, should interrupts have all the same audio so you know what an interrupt sounds like? The best example I can give of this is Overwatch. Enemy champions, when they use their ultimate, have voice lines and phrases that they say. And you know that ultimate's been activated when they say that voice line, and it's an obvious cue. This is the very same format, right? Instead of a voice line, it's honk, honk. I don't know what the hell the thing is. It's going to be a goose or something. What types of alerts you'll be able to pick. We'll have to kind of wait and see how that plays out. But audio is super underrated for how valuable it is, because you can hear audio regardless of where your eyes are, which is super important. You might be looking at your action bar with your cooldowns, might be looking at your target and what it's casting, and your ears can pick up on something that might have happened off screen or to the right or in the corner, and now you're able to assess more data. So I do think playing with game sounds on is actually a huge advantage. It might even be more so the case now with this baseline. and it does give them power in the future to remove add-ons that are, the foghorns and the sword. So this is good that like this initial update's kind of letting us know like what's actually going to happen, what are they going to remove, what could they possibly remove as a result of these things being baseline. So I think it's really important that we stay on top of updates like this. There's additional customizations, resizing, repositioning, saving configurations. So we got loadouts as well for different cooldown setups. I think realizing like there's different formats in the game, you might want different loadouts of cooldowns, so there's different types of situations. So that customizability is there. And looking ahead, as we look forward to introducing these improvements in future updates, we remain committed to refining and expanding these features based on your feedback. We look forward to supporting the wider community and their needs as we continually iterate on the cooldown manager. You can check out the cooldown manager in its current iteration on the live realms by opening the game menu, going to the options settings, and checking the cooldown manager box. So again, I think it's good. They're iterating back and forth. Took a feature that wasn't too hot, added a lot more flavor to it. A little bit of concerns with the debuff tracking maybe not being as great, and it really depends on where this is located, right? I mean, better in-game debuff tracking, which I think it already is there. It tracks dots above player heads even without add-ons. I'm not sure how well that's going to go over, just because I don't play the game tracking debuffs separately than on top of target health bars, basically. But maybe you do. And let me know in the comments down below again if you do. But that's it for the update here. A really big one. So they focused in on cooldowns. They focused in on debuffs. Maybe we'll get one for buffs as well moving forward, because I feel like this is very serious, right? Like which add-ons need to have baseline UI accessibility, which add-ons need to go like the dinosaurs. It's a big debate, has big consequences, and I don't know if this is something that they can easily roll back if they end up going too far in one direction as opposed to going, slowly and then edging towards it over time, and what the best approach is going to be. But it's good that they're communicating. We got an update here, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys very much for watching and supporting the channel as always, and I will see you in the next one.